Good evening, India. I am Punacha Machaya, the Chopra Foundation CEO.
I'm Gabriella Wright, the co-founder of the Never Alone initiative of the Chopra Foundation.
It is indeed an honor for me right now to introduce a dear friend of mine who's going to co-host the India segment with us, live from Dubai, Satya Hinduja.
Good morning, good evening, the world.
Hey, Satya. Hey, Satya. How are you?
Good morning for us, good evening to
Good. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
I'm Satya Hinduja, founder of Alchemic Sonic Environment, welcoming all of you to the Never Alone Summit.
Namaste and namaskara to my friends and family in Namma Bengaluru. And welcome to the Never Alone India Spotlight, new this year, broadcasting live from Dubai and San Diego from the CG Creative Studios. We are reuniting our global community to support the emergence of a new mental health culture. And thank you for joining us from our website, and hello to all of you all coming in live from India, South Asia, Europe, Middle East, and Africa via Facebook and YouTube.
India Spotlight is a new addition this year to the Global Never Alone Summit. We added this special program with more than 20 speakers coming to you in the next 3 hours. You can watch live now or on demand at the neveralonesummit.live website. The India Spotlight is brought to you by the Chopra Foundation, the Hinduja Foundation, Alchemic Sonic Environment, the John W. Brick Mental Health Foundation, and CG Creative Studios. Welcome.
We also want to thank our sponsors and our partners without whom today would have not been possible. For those of you watching on YouTube or Facebook, please be sure to join the conversation and share this with your communities. Here's what you have to look forward to. Our program explores 3 important areas that define our lives and well-being: children and youth, the workplace, and its impacts on our natural environment.
To get started, I would like to welcome world-renowned integrative medicine pioneer, New York Times best-selling author, and he has led the way in bridging the East and the West. Please welcome my dear friend, Dr. Deepak Chopra.
Hello, my friends. It's a great privilege. Hello, my friends. It's a great privilege and honor to be on the platform with all of you on this Never Alone campaign and movement, and also the partnership with the Hinduja Foundation. We're very grateful for this partnership, and also Alchemic Sonic Environment. As you know, there's more and more evidence now that when we have shared vision, complement each other's strengths, and we are open and transparent, our collective intention, our collective emotions generate energy and information and action for solutions. At this moment, we are suffering with grief globally. And grief goes through many stages, but at some time there's acceptance and peace and creative solutions. So today we start a global movement for a more peaceful, just, compassionate, healthier and joyful world. Together, let us resonate with joy, empathy, compassion, and love in action. Thank you, Hinduja Foundation. Thank you, John Brick Foundation. Thank you all, and especially Chopra Foundation, Gabriella and Punacha, for leading this effort. Have a wonderful day, and on to peace, harmony, laughter, and love.
Thank you, Dr. Chopra. We're saddened by the heartbreaking suffering COVID-19 has brought and continues to bring our loved ones, families, country, and the world. Yet, we believe there is always light at the end of the tunnel. Emerging studies in the scientific field of epigenetics show that positive experiences can affect our gene expression and leave unique signatures. There may be ways to reverse certain negative changes and restore healthy functioning. With the intention of hope and deep healing in our hearts, we warmly invite you to join us for a 3-hour deep listening journey into the profound synthesis of India. Please dim your lights, wear your headphones, and get ready for this collective invocation by multiple artists between India, America, and children for the Alchemic Sonic Environment's collective resonance.
Nikola Tesla said that if you wish to understand this universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. We begin our journey of mental health with the awareness that energy, frequency, and vibration are extremely important in the early years of a child's life. Children's brains are impacted even before birth and continue to be immensely impacted into the early developmental years. Although the brain continues to grow and change into adulthood, the first 8 years are the fundamental pillars for future learning, health, and life success. It is an immense pleasure that we will introduce Dr. Shantala Hegde, Associate Professor of the Department of Clinical Neuropsychology at the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, NIHANS, in Bengaluru. Welcome, Dr. Shantala.
Namaste. Indeed, we are never alone. Sound or structured sound that we call as music permeates every aspect of our being. Music is universal, it's ubiquitous, it's present across cultures. In fact, music is known to be existing since the Neanderthal times, that is nearly 35,000 to 40,000 years ago, and there are enough archaeological evidences to show that. Sound, perception of sound, in fact, occurs even while we are in the mother's womb. 25 weeks after the gestation, the fetus is actually able to perceive this lower frequency of mother's voice, the rhythmic aspect of mother's heartbeat, and in fact, this is known to pave path for neural development and important for later acquisition of language skills and higher cognitive functions. In fact, there are studies to show that postnatally, babies show different neural responses to mother's voice, activation in the posterior temporal region, the orbitofrontal or the amygdala region, important for language processing as well as emotion processing. There are also now studies showing how babies respond to music that they have been exposed to in the fetal stage postnatally, and they show differential EEG or the electrical activity or the ERP, event-related potential changes for melodies that have been manipulated from what they have been exposed to. The crucial point here is one, that music stimulation or sound stimulation is important in neural development or the brain development. And today, we do know that formal musical training to children have beneficial effect in helping them acquire language skills and other neurocognitive functions. The other key thing here is the emotion regulation. In fact, the Indian tradition puts a significant importance on the stimulation that the fetus receives while in the womb, called as the Garbha Samskar. Samskar is the word to show or to express impressions that are made. And the impressions made during this fetal stage is known to have a long-lasting effect to the entire lifespan of that given individual. So emotion regulation, the power of music to engage us emotionally is quite obvious. What is also important today from a neuroscience perspective is that music engages almost all neural pathways of the brain. Today, brain is considered as a hub of neural pathways. And music is one such higher cognitive process which engages this entire brain at one go. So it's like the best cognitive gym that you can think of. It engages the frontostriatal network, crucial in processing higher cognitive functions like attention, memory, response inhibition, or what we call as executive functions. The rhythm aspect, which is the other side of a coin in music, engages the motor pathway, like how we get entrained to rhythm, or we tap to rhythm, or we nod our head to the rhythm. Music also activates the emotional center as well as the reward centers of the brain. So it basically activates the very same emotional areas that is known to be involved during our real life emotion that we experience, like happy, joy, sadness, so on and so forth. As we know, brain functions electrically and neurochemically, and music is not only a powerful elicitor of emotion and in turn activates helps secretion of such as dopamine or endorphins, the natural painkillers. Or when we engage in music group activities, it's also known to release oxytocin, which is love hormone or the empathy hormone. So music has a positive benefit on our overall health as well as our brain health in that sense. And musicians who spend hours and hours practicing are today considered as a role model for scientists to understand the functioning of the human brain itself, which still remains an enigma. And they're considered as the role model to understand this veritable nature of the human brain called as the neural plasticity. Neural plasticity is the very true nature of the brain, which engages in the environment. In turn, structurally and functionally changes its structure. So it's like a dynamic process that happens. It's with its engagement with the environment. Another important thing from an Indian perspective is that Indian classical music, which is yet to be studied from the current modern neuroscience perspective a lot more. I agree upon that. But the core soul of Indian classical music is the spiritual aspect. In fact, the roots of Indian classical music is considered to be the Vedas, the Sama Veda to be very specific. The two traditions that we have today, the North Indian classical music or the Hindustani or the South Indian, the Carnatic music, has its roots to the Vedas. And at its core, both these traditions are rich with compositions or methods that actually enable the aspirant to reach higher spiritual goals. In fact, this is my personal opinion that it is the Nada Yoga or similar to the Raja Yoga, the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, the Ashtanga Yoga. So a true aspirant of music also follows the same path, and the final goal is a spiritual one. Connecting it to today's event, music is truly rich, has power to promote health, mental health, as well as positive mental health. So my urge is that if musical training can be made available to every member of the society, not to make them musicians, but as an activity to engage with, I think we'll have a far-reaching benefits at multifold levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shantala Hegde, for such an integrated perspective, tapping into the ancient Indian wisdom of Nada Yoga, all the way to the emerging research that we are yet to discover, giving us hope and inspiration for the times to come. This leads us to our next segment, an artist whose visual poetry is suffused with the wisdom and play of bhakti, a word representing divine love, a 15th century dream sequence of children offering dance as a form of sacred ritual and healing, and in building confidence, empathy, spatial awareness, and non-verbal communication. Param Tomanec has served a tenure at the Oxford Center of Hindu Studies, an artist in residence, and is currently working on Krida Yatra, his second art project pairing earthly life and the divine.
as we continue to learn about the importance of supporting healthy brain development, it is very important to question where our current systems of education have been failing our children and the world. We're honored, truly honored, to be graced by Padma Bhushan awardee Sadhguru, founder Isha Foundation. He has also founded Isha Samskriti, an education system with the vision of reviving the ancient Indian Gurukul system, dedicated to a child's overall development, providing them with an ideal environment for learning to unfold in harmony within themselves and the world around them. Please welcome Sadhguru.
Namaskaram to all of you who are participating in this Never Alone Global Health Summit. In today's world, understanding the basis of mental health has become of utmost importance, and it's more relevant than ever before. While the world is battling the challenges of the pandemic that is raging at a time like this, it is important to understand the basis of health and well-being. All human experience has a chemical basis. What we call peace, love, joy, agony, depression or ecstasy all have a chemical basis. Health and ill health has a chemical basis. The human body is a complex chemical factory. One way to handle this is by popping chemicals from outside. This is happening large scale in today's world. Another way is learning to manage this complex chemical factory. If we do not learn to manage this well from within, the question of being healthy is only accidental. To do this inner management of this phenomenally complex chemical factory, first thing is you need to find access to the within. Yoga is the science and technology of finding access to the very source of creation, which is throbbing within you. It is from this basis we offer what we refer to as inner engineering. Engineering your interiority is a way of taking charge of your life from within. If you could engineer yourself the way you want to be, you definitely would make yourself into highest level of pleasantness on all levels of life. When it comes to creating pleasantness around us, we will have to learn the competence of being able to manage many forces around us. But for pleasantness of body, pleasantness of mind, emotion and energies, it is 100% our business. So this is very important. The technologies for inner well-being are brought into the life of children at a very early age. Unfortunately, our schools and our education systems have been busy teaching how you conquer the world. What will you do conquering the world? I'm telling you, the world is already yours. The question is, will you live a wonderful life on this planet or not? For this to happen, it is important your body, your mind, your emotions and your energies are at highest level of pleasantness. It is based on this. The entire system of Isha Samskriti has been created. We're using art forms like classical music, classical dance, like Bharatanatyam, Carnatic music, Hindustani music, and Kalari, which is the mother of all martial arts, and also languages in a certain way, to see that the yoga that they practice becomes multidimensional and brings an enormous amount of balance and well-being, develops the human body and mind to its fullest capabilities, and above all, makes them into exuberant and equanimous human beings. The word Samskriti means just this. Sam means equanimous, it also means exuberant. This is all we have to do. If our life is exuberant, at the same time equanimous, you will see the best of you will come out of you, your genius will unfold without restrictions, and your ability to handle yourself and the world will be greatly enhanced. This culture of well-being, this culture of health, physical and mental health, has to come in. Health is not something that you fix. Health is something that you grow within yourself. It's my wish and my blessing that all of you who are committed to this cause will be able to bring this about in the education systems of this world, particularly in India. We have a profound culture behind us which was greatly invested into human well-being, not into human conquest, not into human ambition, but into human blossoming. This is the time to do this. The pandemic has brought a few things home. We must not waste this. We must make use of this to transform our education systems. We must make use of it to transform the way we bring up our children. This life is not about being better than somebody. This life is about being at the best possible way you can be, because in our lives, if we do not do what we cannot do, there is no problem. But if we do not do what we can do, that's a disastrous life. It's my wish and my blessing, we will be able to create the necessary atmosphere in the world, particularly in India, that the next generation of children grow up with these possibilities.
Isha Samskriti is an education system founded by Sadhguru as an offering to the world. A unique blend of yoga, Indian classical arts such as Bharatanatyam, Carnatic and Hindustani music, and martial arts in the form of Kalaripayattu bring balance and stability to the child's body and mind. Children grow in the nurturing and powerfully energized space of the Isha Yoga Center with profound yogic processes as an integral part of their upbringing.
Namaskaram. My name is Kshiraja and I'm 16 years old. I come from Bangalore and I've been studying in Samskriti for the past 9 years. Being in Samskriti, I have chosen Carnatic music and Bharatanatyam as my main subjects. I used to be very self-conscious when I get onto stage, when I dance or sing. But after practicing yoga for many years, I feel that the art shows more than myself. Learning Bharatanatyam has helped me stretch to my fullest capabilities mentally, physically and emotionally, and in my energies I feel very exuberant when I dance. Initially, I used to think that dance and music is about action, but slowly after practicing yoga for many years, I began to notice that the silence between each note or between every movement, that is what gives it beauty.
Namaskaram. So, my name is Prasanna. My age is 18 and I have been studying in Samskriti for the past 11 years. Here all these subjects are physical, like yoga, kalari. It demands you to be physically more active. But even in those times when I pushed and tried to do it to my maximum, I felt a sense of joy within me. I enjoyed the situation rather. So that made me keep doing it and made me more involved in the subjects here. With this, what I saw was I became more aware of how I move the body. This is more important even in kalari. So there it really demands you to be aware, totally aware of the body. In that way, it supported me in kalari as well. Apart from this, what I see is yoga has also given me physical stability. In terms of doing Kalaripayattu, balance is one thing which most important. So by doing yoga practices, I have gained more stability on foot. For me, it has made a difference. So regularly, I just want to keep up with the practice and do it regularly.
Apart from the arts and other classes, their exposure to and constant involvement with deeply meditative aspects of yoga allow them to enhance their inner well-being and grow into full-fledged, balanced human beings.
Namaskaram. My name is Yining. I am 11 years old. I live in Delhi, China, and I have been studying Samskriti for 2 years. So before I came to Samskriti, I felt I was finding fault in all my friends and see only the negative side of how they are. And I used to get irritated with them very easily for no reason, thought like that. But after I came to Samskriti, after I have studied here for 2 years, I feel I am able to see the positive side of my friends and the people around me.
My name is Lokesh. I'm 20 years old now. I've been studying in Sanskriti since 2009 for the last 11 years. So being here with a completely different kind of people, and that to a place where you never thought you would be, was a little challenging at the beginning. I used to cry and I used to go through a lot of drama within myself in the first 1 or 2 years. But after that, slowly I got accustomed to the situations here, and once I realized how this place is actually helping me, and when I became friends with people here and I became more involved with my studies here, it turned around completely, where after that I never wanted to go back home. So practicing Kalari and yoga for these many years, it has kind of helped me, where I understand what the body wants and how it will work better. Otherwise, even on a physical level, in terms of doing any activity or doing either playing or anything else, it has helped me a lot in terms of my capability and my competence. It helps me in doing whatever I do in its best way. When I was around 11 or 12 years of age, I noticed and I saw that my mind and my thought process were like out of control, and I was like in a mess basically. And I used to feel very upset about it, and I didn't know what to do about it. But then after a few years of Kalari practice, this just by practicing Kalari, it has brought a certain stillness and stability both to the mind and my emotional processes. If I want to change something, either about myself or something around me, when I saw that if I want, I should do it, and I have to take the responsibility for it, because ultimately my life, the way I feel, is my responsibility. When I realized that, then I was able to kind of push myself and see what works and what doesn't work, and actually do something that changes the situation. Right now, I know this pandemic is a very challenging situation for everyone in the world. For us here, because we are in a certain environment, we have the necessary support. But I know people outside, especially young people who would want to do something in their life, are like kind of, they cannot do anything right now. If I'm ever in a situation where it is challenging, I've learned this much, that I know how to handle myself and also push myself in such a way so that I can change situations both for me and people around me.
Let's continue our journey from the natural environments of South India to the hustle of Mumbai city, India's financial capital. Integrating ancient wisdom with modern perspective is our next guest, my dear friend Tanvi Jindal, who began her journey in education as a Teach for India Fellow, enabling the underprivileged with quality education. She's the managing trustee of Jindal Education Trust. Tanvi has always been driven towards the goal to make learning for all children not only enjoyable, but also meaningful. Turning these thoughts into reality, Tanvi has founded Museum of Solutions, an interactive and immersive children's museum complementing an inclusive and accessible education system that is bringing children at the forefront of her project. Welcome, Tanvi.
In 2020 has taught us so many unexpected things. For one, it has taught us that we are all in this together and that we're never alone. Even though there has been tremendous sorrow during this year, there has been a small ray of hope. Museum of Solutions has blossomed during this year.
It's been around 1.5 years that I'm doing online classes, and sometimes it takes toll on my mind, both physically and mentally.
So the things that I lost and I miss is going to play with my friends, meeting them face to face.
I've missed my school. I've met few friends, but my other friends, I miss them. I miss traveling and getting the experience.
The human touch is one thing that I really miss.
Children have shown that they can be extremely resilient and they can make the most of whatever's given to them.
Throughout this lockdown, I got to learn how to cook. Like initially, I didn't know how to bake roti, but now I can make, very, very good rotis, different level of rotis.
I love to sing, and I've been writing songs that spread messages, and because of my music, I've never felt alone.
I've gained more knowledge in school, and I feel like I've gained more flexibility in my contortion.
Something that I've realized that is very important is time with family, and it's been spending time with my brother, my parents, my grandmother.
I had a lot of fights with my friends, and it helped me resolve them.
Cooperation, patience, and adaptation.
One thing I would strongly suggest to all the youth cheering me right now, to make sure that they are mentally strong and mentally super positive, is get them involved in something they truly love.
I made quiches and I sold them to my friends and family, and the money that I collected, I gave a phone to a boy from Patna who couldn't afford it for him to study.
From what we've heard by speaking to children and working with children really is that they want to do so much more, but they just don't have the platform to do it. So that is what Museum of Solutions is trying to provide. It's trying to provide a platform that believes in children.
We are not alone. You are not alone. We are all in this together.
Thank you, Tanvi. That is so inspirational. I really need to work on my akhi rotis. I'm still working on that. For everybody who's online and watching this, please download Cerebral, the first holistic assessment and training platform for cognitive health. And this is coming from MindMaze, an amazing app. So moving on, as children become teenagers, their brains grow and change, affecting their thinking, behavior, and emotions. Adolescence is a time of significant growth and development because the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain for critical thinking and decision-making, is still being developed. Teenagers tend to rely on the amygdala, the part of the brain that reacts for emotions, aggression, and instinct. Our next speaker, Dr. Vikram Patel, the Pershing Square Professor of Global Health at the Harvard Medical School, specializes in community healthcare and in developing countries. His project, It's Okay to Talk, focusing on youth and mental health, has been creating a wonderful community for a country where 65% of the population is the youth.
Hello, my name is Vikram Patel, and I want to tell you about It's Okay to Talk. It's Okay to Talk was born on World Health Day 2017, taking inspiration from the theme of that year, Let's Talk, which emphasized the central role of disclosure in recovery from depression. Our guiding principle is that talking about mental health is the first step to breaking the stigma, and telling our personal stories has the power to enable people to understand and empathize with each other and know that they're not alone. Through young people's stories, this initiative lays emphasis on the centrality of mental health for well-being, the vulnerabilities which some of us will experience, and the routes to resilience and recovery. Since its inception, our bilingual website and social media has reached more than 3 million users and hosted more than 75 events, training 50 national youth advocates and working with more than 270 volunteers. More than 250 young people have made personal submissions to share their stories through our portal. Most recently, It's Okay to Talk's work has extended to launch Manmela, a mental health web museum that brings together 10 young people's stories from across India. The program recently launched the audio podcast Stories from a Pandemic, which features young people's first-hand experiences of living through the COVID-19 pandemic and how we can look to the future with hope. Friends, mental health problems were already a leading cause of suffering and the most neglected health issue in India and around the world before the pandemic. The pandemic will, through worsening the social determinants of mental health, particularly for young people, fuel a worsening of this crisis. This presents a historic opportunity to reimagine the traditional approaches to mental health by scaling up the science which demonstrates the need to recognize mental health as a global public good, important to all people in all countries and especially to young people, and central to the concept of human capital. Mental health is our most precious personal asset. To realize this goal, we must embrace the diversity of mental health experiences and actions which can transform and save lives.
We are all people, and we all have mental health. And our mental health goes through many ups and downs, just like life does.
I was suffering from depression.
मेरे साथ काफ़ी प्रॉब्लम हुआ था कि मैं 12th में फेल हो गया था 2 बार.
I have been diagnosed with clinical depression and I'm a suicide attempt survivor.
Growing up, I felt that I could not express myself. I felt a lack of confidence, and I felt that a lot of the things and stresses and anxiety that I'm feeling, I'm in it alone.
So there was a lot of social anxiety, and if I would go out in large groups, I would just feel uncomfortable.
I've been overweight all my life. I was bullied for it, which led to a lot of body image issues.
मैं मास्टर्स में था तो मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा डिफिकल्टीज थी, खास करके इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज को लेकर.
When I was young, the symptoms used to be really bad, especially the mood swings and the sleeplessness.
Mental health problems are very common, especially for young people. But many of us don't know when we might be experiencing difficulties or have mental health needs. And we often face struggles in talking about this or finding the help we need. It can often be difficult to open up. It can be scary to understand what we are experiencing. And it can sometimes be hard to accept or live with.
जब मैंने अपनी प्रॉब्लम रिकॉग्नाइज करी तो उसके बाद अपनी फैमिली का सपोर्ट लिया.
The first thing that I did while I was going through depression was speak to my mother and share my problem with her.
Having those friends, especially I think friends really play an important role, like at least in my life, because I'm not out to my family, so they don't know a lot of issues. So my friend knew it and they stood by me a lot. And how positively you can talk about mental health.
I started reaching out to information mostly online. I started reading books. I started watching videos about psychology, mental health.
Last year I started seeking help because I started working in mental health care and I felt it was necessary for me to resolve and deal with my own issues.
फिर एक टाइम आया कि मुझे कुछ लोग मिले जहाँ पर मुझे बात करने का मौका मिला और जहाँ मैं अपने बारे में बता पाया और लोगों के बारे में भी सुन पाया.
It's Okay to Talk is a public engagement project by Sangat that builds awareness about mental health through storytelling and building spaces for conversations and learning. It engages young people with mental health information and helps build their capacities to address mental health needs.
When first I told my dad that I think I need help, he did not understand what I meant, and then I had to tell him that I need to see a therapist. I don't think I can go on without that. That's when I decided that I'm going to share my story as much as possible because I felt it was empowering.
If even one person can read my story and get the help they need, or know that someone else like them is out there and they're doing everything they can to take care of their mental health, and that person can do it too, I think I've achieved what I set out to accomplish.
Mental health problems are the biggest challenge for young people in India today. But your story matters and can change this.
The importance of community in a diverse county like India cannot be overstated. Now we must begin our journey inward and find the courage to communicate our struggles in the hope that our experience may resonate with someone else who has been suffering in silence. Research shows that 20% of young people globally struggle with their mental health, but that number falls to only 7.3 in India, a country with the largest population in the world. Stigma and shame are some of the strongest barriers for young Indians to overcome when they're seeking help for mental health. Our next speaker, Nupur Goenka, founder of Semicolon, a digital publication unboxing culture, art and science and evolution in the mental health space, shares with us her personal story.
So let me tell you a little story. For the better part of my life, I kept a distance from the subject of mental health. I entered college wanting to be a writer, but I became restless and wound up taking random courses, everything from rock music during the Cold War to the history of astrophysics, until I eventually settled on cognitive neuroscience. And even then, I remained at the surface level of the mental health topic. While pursuing the major, my exposure was limited to textbooks and lectures. I memorized the symptoms of clinical depression, what anxiety does to the brain, you name it. I graduated, the textbooks were returned or collected dust in my cupboard, and I started running a product and technology company in India. And for a long time, that was it. Everything changed after I had my first panic attack, and I remember everything about that day. I remember what it felt like, the fear, the breathlessness, the confusion, all of it. It was on that same day that I started my journey with therapy and with mental health as well. And even though I knew I was never really alone, it honestly felt like a lonely road. I did learn something that changed my life. I learned how to be curious about my mental health rather than ashamed of it. Therapy was a large part of my healing, but I also found so much refuge in art, in music. Certain songs got me through some of my darkest moments. I became curious about pet therapy. I thought about the intersections between mental health and technology. I began meditating and found myself digging through old textbooks to read about the effects of meditation on our neural circuits. It wasn't a linear journey of healing, but I didn't expect to find myself becoming passionate about the universe of mental health. This made me really sad, though. You shouldn't have to experience a battle with your mental health to be curious or to talk about the subject. So I started speaking to a few people. I realized that people who were like me before my first panic attack and naturally avoided the topic of suicide became interested in learning about how suicide helplines are set up and how volunteers are trained. People who didn't like to discuss anxiety found it fascinating to talk about big data and the analysis of music lyrics that indicate global trends in mental health. People who got offended when someone recommended a therapist loved exploring the possibilities of virtual reality in therapy settings. And this is what led to starting Semicolon, bringing together people from around the world to talk about the elements of mental health and to show you that the subject is fascinating and important. It's not emotionally draining. I don't want anyone to have to go through a battle to dive into a world that has so much depth, so many dimensions, and can offer so much growth. I think there is hope if we journey through this world with curiosity and love rather than tiptoe around it with reluctance. You are never alone. People, communities, and projects from everywhere, including Semicolon, are trying every day to push the narrative forward. So always remember that you can add to that voice too.
Thank you, Nupur, for being raw and open about your life and inspiring young people to push the wellness narrative forward. Please support a big shout out to We the People, a fundraiser compilation by various Indian artists, including me out today for COVID relief. Search for charity compilation released today on Bandcamp. Continuing our story of mental health and our next act is one of the most sought after electronica and indie bands in the Indian post-rock musical landscape. Their art is a reminder of the resilience of the young people in this country. The band's work showcases the hope that Indians have that their openness about mental health will lead to a kinder and more compassionate future. Welcome as we keep searching.
We belong to a country called India, with 1.3 billion people located in Asia, part of planet Earth, somewhere in the universe. We have always been loud. Be in the traffic, a celebration, a religious ceremony, our tone, laughter, greeting, everything. It's always been us. Loud. You might wonder, when are we silent then? Only when we are asleep? As a child, if I went to my mother and convey my sadness, I was asked to watch TV. As an adult, if I reach out for help with my loneliness, I would be asked to get married. What is mental well-being? No one knew. Maybe we never had the luxury of knowing. We only kept escaping. But now things are changing. People are changing. Today it is okay to be not okay. There is compassion, love, and care for each other. We talk about mental well-being with pure attention and silence. The past year has made it all the more relevant. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, we have been forced to spend time alone. And it has worked for some and against others. We don't have all the answers. But we know we are in this journey to explore ourselves, going inward. You are never alone. We all go through an ocean of emotions, every day, every moment. It does make the mind heavy. But hey, we are still here. In the now. Isn't that wonderful? You, me, and so many others have the strength to be gentle on our minds without being judgmental, without labeling our thoughts, only by acknowledging every feeling as it comes and goes. We call ourselves as we keep searching. Just like you, we have had our share of anxiety and stress. We are no experts on mental health and wellness, but we choose to talk about it because of how important it is. How important it is to believe that it is okay to be not okay. The mind is precious. We must take care of it.
Thank you. That was so beautiful as we keep searching for giving us the message that we're not alone, that it's okay to go through an ocean of emotions and that we must be gentle with ourselves in this lifelong process of learning and unlearning. Let us take a moment to acknowledge the heroic COVID relief efforts of the Mukul Foundation. Please donate to the foundation to enable access to life-saving support like oxygen concentrators, much needed for the severely affected due to the second wave of the pandemic. Art is an especially powerful medium of understanding and healing. Art therapy is known to help alleviate physical pain, lower stress and anxiety levels, tackle depression, and increase self-esteem. Our next guest has seen the timeless healing power of art therapy up close. Interdisciplinary artist Devika Sundar suffers from chronic pain due to fibromyalgia, but used art to find self-acceptance and self-love.
My relationship with art started shifting around the time I was 17. Due to the initial symptoms of fibromyalgia, I began developing progressive chronic pain in my body, causing difficulty in my ability to create the way I used to. Dealing with progressive health issues over the recent 10 years left me not only frustrated and confused, but rashly fighting myself and my body, refusing to give up what I believed I loved. While art had been the realm of color, of escape, pain was suffused with shame, embarrassment, and a growing disassociation with myself and my body. It was only recently where art began taking on a different value. While my body no longer found familiar ease in the physical process the way it used to, I realized in digging deeper the ability and power of art to connect, comfort, and find shared and related meaning. In expressing voice and form to collective experiences that otherwise stay confusing, ambiguous, and isolating to verbalize. Every day we walk and pass by each other, never imagining that the stories and baggage we each travel with and carry are in many ways layered, weaved, shared, and interconnected. Processing the last year has been difficult and disorienting. Seeping fractures of suspicion and fear find us ready to blame, alienate, and otherize one another as a way of making sense of what's happening around us. However, a virus persists, and what it has unraveled is an uncomfortable mirror to our collective fragility and interdependence. That we are more vulnerable than we would like to believe and are threaded through our very fragilities, bound by the organs, blood, and bodies we inhabit. In shifting through the collective anxiety, isolation, and heaviness of the year, art has allowed me to retrieve spaces of silence, safety, and outlet, to recover moments of reflection and recuperation, and to realize the shared impermanence and transience of time between one another.
While each of us has a unique spirit, soul, and vibration, a common thread of fragility, emotion, and vulnerability binds us together into one human collective. Thank you, Devika, for reminding of us that. Before I proceed, I want to kind of take a moment and pause and really thank Satya Hinduja. Satya, you know what, after all these years, I want to kind of take this 30 seconds to say amazing job. What you're doing to pave the way where sound can heal is amazing, and I'm very grateful to you and your family and the whole Hinduja group. Now, it's a privilege to introduce our next speaker, Ranveer Allahbadia, India's #1 YouTube content creator and podcaster, The Ranveer Show. he has bridged the shamanic practices of South America along with the Vedic wisdom tradition of India. Please welcome Ranveer.
Namaste from India to everyone attending the Never Alone Summit. I'm supposed to share my story in this particular video. My story began, I feel, at the age of 22. Pre-age 22, I did have my own struggles. I did have my own mental health challenges. I dealt with alcoholism. I dealt with drug addiction. I dealt with a bunch of things that definitely gave me character once I came out of them. At age 22, I happened to do something called ayahuasca. I'm sure many of you guys attending the summit would have heard of plant medicine, would have heard of ayahuasca. Let me tell you that a lot of the stuff you see on the internet about this being a scary experience or this being a heavy experience isn't true. What ayahuasca does is that it changes certain neurological patterns in your brains through an experience that you will be able to handle. Now, this isn't a video of me promoting ayahuasca. This is simply a video of me telling you the story of what happened. When you're taking part in an ayahuasca ceremony, you always go in with certain questions. The question I had was that, what's the one missing link for my career? When you're a 22-year-old in India, there's a lot of pressure that society puts on you about career performance, about your mark in this world, about your status in a status-driven society. I had a lot of pressure on me in that phase. I can't explain my entire ayahuasca experience. If you want to know about that, please check out my YouTube channel, Beer Biceps. But the outcome of it was that I felt like Mother Ayahuasca, the plant, gave me a message, and this was that message. It conveyed to me that I had every tool in the world when it came to achieving my dreams. That changed everything. I felt like I came out of that ayahuasca ceremony a much more confident person with bags of self-belief. That self-belief had been broken through addiction, through heartbreaks, through the traumas of Indian engineering college. But I came out of that ceremony as a different person. After my ayahuasca ceremony, my YouTube career really started taking off. I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm a YouTuber, but I'm also a social media entrepreneur. I'm also into tech startups. And everything that we've done in this 5-year journey began, honestly began with that ayahuasca experience and that seed of self-belief. Eventually, my shaman also introduced me to meditation practices. He introduced me to Om chanting meditation specifically, which I felt cleaned up a lot of stuff in my head. I'd sit to chant, and when I'd actually get deep into the chant, 15 minutes in, I'd go back into memories, remember something extremely painful, feel exactly how I felt in that painful moment and release it. That's when I discovered the power of meditation, the power of daily meditation, the power of consistency. It works just like the gym. But what I do want to highlight is the gifts that India gives you. Just like South America has given the world plant medicine, India has given the world advanced meditation courses. The outcome is the same. It's a pill for long-term pain. It's a pill towards better mental health. That's what I did post creating this habit of Om chanting meditation. I searched for deeper meditations, found a Reiki course, found a transcendental meditation course, toyed with the Hinduja Foundation run by Sadhguru. And then eventually I found my flow in something called YSS. As you can see, the altar of YSS is behind me. YSS in the West is called the Self-Realization Fellowship. It includes study. It's sort of like martial arts. You have a sensei teaching you techniques. You've got to practice those techniques yourself. And as you keep practicing those techniques, you release painful pieces of your past and you embrace positive mindsets for your future. Well, I think I'm past the 4-minute mark, so I will end this particular video. This and a lot more is available on our YouTube channel, Beer Biceps, on our podcast, The Ranveer Show. Please check it out. All I want to highlight is that plant medicine is the gift of South America. Advanced meditation is the gift of India. It's for you to discover. It's for you to benefit from. Meditation definitely works with consistency. Meditation works even better when you know certain secret magical techniques that are available for everyone.
Like Ranveer said, it's up to each one of us to embrace and integrate mindfulness in our busy lives. Research has found that humans tend to feel overwhelmed when they're forced to reckon with big lifestyle changes, and I am certainly making manageable bite-sized choices that you can sustain over long periods of time can be more beneficial for your mental well-being. So please join us for a lively conversation with actor, producer, and ambassador of the Never Alone Initiative and a dear friend of mine, Abhay Deol, and integrative medicine and holistic lifestyle coach, Luke Coutinho.
Luke, it's a pleasure to have you here, man. Seriously.
Good to see you. It's so good to see you. You're looking great. You're looking amazing.
Yeah, well, it's the Goa sun.
Good to see you.
But it's really nice to be a part of this summit, particularly through this time of COVID, right? From what you do, like, give me a little idea of what your day is like. What are you dealing with right now in terms of mental health and COVID, and particularly in India right now?
I think, we're seeing patients with COVID. We're seeing patients who are unable to get their surgeries done. We're seeing patients who have cancer, but they're unable to get their PET scan done because the hospitals are completely full. So we're seeing a lot of suffering, a lot of difficulty. We're also seeing a lot of miracles happen because a lot of people who are waiting certain results, they're actually getting better in that time, showing us that, hey, sometimes the body does need its own time to heal instead of slamming it with treatments all the time. So we're seeing a lot, but I think there's a decline in mental health, Abhay, and we're seeing that all over because uncertainty, fear, news, media, people dying. So I think when we don't have clarity, it always builds into more and more fear. So people are running around, stocking up on vitamin C, on zinc, on turmeric, on garlic, and, all of that stuff. So I think fear is huge right now, and mental health is really on the decline. That's what we're seeing every single day.
But mental health as an issue in India, in any case, has been really poorly sort of researched, and there's not much infrastructure for people suffering all sorts of depression or symptoms of, bipolar, schizophrenia. There's a whole host of stuff out there. Is India lagging behind on giving support to people who suffer these problems?
See, I think India has been lagging behind for a long time. It's also because of society doesn't want to say that, hey, I have a son or a daughter or my brother or my father who's bipolar. They don't want to say that mental illness is looked down on our country, which is why a lot of good organizations now in our country are making people aware that it's okay. If you have a problem, it's okay, because there are so many things that you can do. Medicine is just one part of it. But, even putting yourself in the right environment with the right amount of people, the right amount of lifestyle, like your nutrition impacts your mental wellness, your sleep impacts your mental wellness, your exercise, all of these are integrated in a way to help you feel better about yourself. And of course, we're going through a phase where social media is dominating our country right now, which of course today's scientific stats tell us that, hey, social media, too much of it causes depression. So we got to learn how to handle social media as well. But I think India has really picked up on that missing bit in the mental health infrastructure. And there's a lot of awareness being created. So like you, I'm so happy and privileged to be part of the summit that is bringing mental health to light right now.
I think this is a part of your theme or your philosophy, I don't know what to call it, that there is no one size fits all solution to people's problems, whether they're mental or physical or emotional, right? Each individual is a unique sort of system, right? And I think that's something that a lot of people are not aware of. I think people just want this sort of one size fits all. They just want a pill for everybody, right? Everyone wants the same pill to take care of the same problem, but that doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah, it doesn't have to work that way. The allopathic way of medicine, which is also great. Allopathy saves lives, it kills people. We need it. But I think we've got
allopathy, sorry to cut you, but as I see allopathy, it's great for emergencies.
Yes, absolutely.
And they it takes care of the symptoms, but not the disease. That happens more often.
Not the root cause. You hit it bang on. Yeah. The symptoms, it's great for a symptom. Okay, so I have a headache, I take a medicine. I have a headache again, I take a medicine. But now, why am I getting the headache? Do I have too much of stress? Am I sleep deprived? Do I have a deficiency of magnesium? Now let me start fixing the root cause of the problem so I don't have to go on taking that medication. So chronic lifestyle diseases in our country is at the highest. Examples: diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancers, obesity. These are all lifestyle diseases. But we give it a symptomatic approach. Let's suppress the symptom. I'm not against that. But I think with mental awareness increasing now, people are realizing that, hey, listen, take the medicine. but start to change your lifestyle. Why are you feeling this way? Why are you getting sick? Let's talk about mental awareness, which is one of our most common problems in relationships. People are stuck in toxic relationships, okay? But they're taking more and more chemicals to balance their serotonin and their dopamine to feel better. But the problem is the toxic relationship. So it kind of makes sense to fix the relationship or exit it if you can, rather than go on beating yourself up with medication, which has its own limitations at some point. So I think we have to look at everyone as a unique individual. And we have to start making lifestyle changes. I think the whole COVID's brought up this investment in preventive health, preventive medicine, which is huge. And we can't just depend on medicine to fix us. We have to look at lifestyle and addressing the root cause as well.
But what about like extreme cases, like people who have biological, chemical depression, who have to take pills? Have you seen any cases where someone had that and has somehow been able to make do without the medication and still, like, is it possible to be chemically sort of imbalanced and have a depression and be able to overcome it without medication or weed off medication slowly? Have you seen that?
It is possible.
Yeah?
It is. And a lot of good psychiatrists and psychologists in our company actually help patients to get off their chemicals after a while. You need it when you're going through something. Okay, when you're constantly depressed, it's natural. If you're feeling sad, you can't say that your chemicals are in balance. They're out of balance. That's why you're feeling sad. So the medication usually helps you for a while. And if you have a really good doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, you start building a support system of family, the right friends, automatically the body learns to start adjusting. Very few cases require medication for a lifetime, very few. But with the right coaching, over time, good psychologists and doctors are reducing medication and even getting patients off the medication. And that's the beauty. That gives all of us hope that the human body has the ability to heal itself. But it must be done under the supervision of your doctor, the right way. I think that's important because you know what's missing in medicine, Abhay, which is what I'm really happy about this whole summit happening. I think when we look at mental awareness today, do we need more medicine? No, there's enough of medicine. Okay, there is medicine. But I think as a society, people are not expressive anymore. When you don't express emotions, it tends to build up into you, in you, and it explodes at some point into anger, into crime, into disease. So I think today with mental awareness coming up, people are getting that permission to speak, to express how they feel. If they can't do it with their counselors, they're doing it with their family members or vice versa. I think expression is a very, very important part because one is you feel that someone understands my problem. I'm not alone in this. There are other people going through this as well. So you're not made to feel like you're sick, like you're a patient. So I think with mental awareness in the limelight right now, people are getting that permission to realize that it's okay if I am this way, but I can get better. There's hope for everyone to get better.
Well, look, so one thing I can definitely say that what really helps someone who is having an episode, a mental breakdown, needs help, is to have community, friends, family, some kind of, because we are a social species. We're not a solo species, right? So it's important to have people around you, correct?
Absolutely. It's extremely important. And I think everyone should remember, whoever's going through any ups, downs, lows, highs, whatever it is, you are never alone. You are never alone.
Sorry, I have to ask you once more.
Yeah, okay.
There are people who are alone though. Mm-hmm. There are people who are alone. So what do you say I don't want someone watching this who's alone to say, well, I'm alone.
Yeah, okay.
There was some help, right? And that's why we can say that you're never alone, because I think there's an ecosystem, like even this summit that we're part of, Never Alone, is set up so people can access someone on the phone. You can call in and get help that you need. And in that sense, you're never alone, because there's always someone's humanity out there.
Yeah, you may feel alone, but all of us as human beings should remind ourselves that we are never alone. We can reach out to humanity. We can reach out to people who can be there for us, who are willing to be there for us. And summits teach us that there are people, there are resources, there are ecosystems, we're part of it. We have to just overcome that little fear and that one obstacle to reach out and find that we are never alone. There is someone there for us.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the work you're doing, man, seriously, hats off to you. It's people like yourself.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it's people like yourself who help those who who find themselves alone sometimes.
Privilege dictates our ability to make certain choices in life, including sustainable, holistic practices for our mental health, especially in India, where 2 people are plunged into poverty every second. Mental health care is a luxury, and I know this really well. Social inequalities also make less privileged people more vulnerable to mental illnesses, and some of the major causes for these inequalities relate to gender, caste, religion, sexuality, employment, and income. Our next guest, actor Shalini Peiris, will discuss the link between race, privilege, and creative expression. As a native of Sri Lanka living in the UK, Shalini has adapted storytelling and deep listening practices to find empathy in her interactions. Please join me in welcoming Shalini.
Hi everyone, my name is Shalini. I'm an actress and activist and wanted to speak to you today about race and creative expression. Now, I occupy an interesting position. In the country I live in, the UK, I'm a double minority as a woman of color, and the same is true of the industry I work in. But in the country I come from, Sri Lanka, I'm a member of the majority. And whether I like it or not, I'm the recipient of all the privilege that comes with not only being Sinhalese, but also middle upper class, and it can be an uncomfortable contradiction at times. When you see where we are as a world, to not acknowledge your own culpability is not only unacceptable, it's actually dangerous. I mean, Sri Lanka is no longer at war, but are we at peace? What have we learned? How have we healed? And what is the cost of not doing either? Now, the majority of that responsibility, I strongly believe, can only lie with the majority, because without them, change, reconciliation, and healing simply cannot happen. And it was in the spirit of stepping up to that responsibility that I decided to do a series of interviews with fellow Sri Lankans about their experiences being a minority in Sri Lanka. And with their permission, I posted their interviews with their identities kept anonymous across my social media platforms, translated into the 3 main languages spoken in Sri Lanka: Sinhala, Tamil, and English. It sparked a conversation simply by passing the mic and allowing untold stories to be told. I mean, they've been hurt by our country because they love it so much. And their outrage and protest, which some Sinhalese see as hostile, simply needs to be read with a different lens. Instead of the anger, look to the pain underneath. And if you don't know, ask them and listen to what they have to say. Now, we are seeing the rise of the far right around the world, including South Asia. And with that comes a tight control of narratives, what you can and can't say, what we can and can't remember. Divisiveness and aggressive nationalism is the name of the game now. Storytelling is one of the oldest art forms and one that is deeply embedded in South Asian culture. What if stories can help us heal? What if we can best learn by hearing each other's stories? Where politicians won't go, maybe artists can. And I truly believe that in its purest form, the arts is a revolutionary medium. It is by telling a story, simply by telling a story with zero judgment and 100% empathy, you can truly impact people, challenge them, educate them, comfort them, and activate them. And this is my invitation and offering to you all. Let's go back to our roots as storytellers. Embrace your story and the stories of others, and maybe then we can truly learn, heal, and grow.
Thank you, Shalini, and I'm really inspired. Love Sri Lanka. And Jiddu Krishnamurti said, truth is a pathless land, and thank you for sharing the truth in your stories. As participants in a society with record levels of stress and anxiety, we must realize that compassion is critical to our mental and physical well-being. It's only through principles of sensitivity and a sense of humanity will we overcome inequalities that persist in our homes, workplace, and in nature. I'm indeed honored to have our next speaker, Sadhvi Bhagwati Saraswati ji, President of Divine Shakti Foundation, Secretary General of Global Interfaith WASH Alliance, and she shares her wisdom on how sustainable ecosystem can ease the suffering of those who struggle with their mental health. It is with great pleasure I would like to welcome Sadhvi ji. Namaskar.
It's so wonderful to be together here today for the Never Alone Summit. It is needed so much every day, and especially right now. As we gather together during Mental Health Awareness Month, we realize that COVID did not cause mental dis-ease, but it has certainly exacerbated it. It has certainly even caused it to manifest in places where it previously lay dormant. And yet, mental dis-ease existed long before COVID, and it will continue to exist long after this pandemic is over. And for that, as we come together today, we really ask ourselves, what is it that as individuals who are suffering and as societies and communities we can do to lessen, and even by God's grace, dare we say eradicate, mental dis-ease. And I say dis-ease rather than disease because so many suffer, not only from diagnosable diseases, not only from those that you would find in the DSM-4R with lists of criteria, but simply from a state, an internal state that is a lack of ease, a lack of peace, a lack of stability, a lack of meaning. And so we look at all of that as well. All of that keeps us from living fully in the awareness of, in the embodiment of our highest, deepest, fullest, most complete, most whole selves. And for that, we need to look at 4 critical components on both personal levels for those who suffer and on societal and community levels for all of us who live with those who are suffering. Number 1, connection. When we suffer depression, anxiety, addictions, so much of the root of the suffering is the experience of disconnection, the experience of separation. We feel separate. We feel separate from our true selves, our higher selves. We feel separate from God. We feel separate from each other, separate from the creation and the Creator. We feel alone. Here in this beautiful summit, we remind everyone, you are not alone. You are never alone. And yet that experience of feeling alone is such a powerful contributor to mental dis-ease.
My favorite joke on this is the man who goes to the doctor complaining that everything hurts. He says, when I touch my head, it hurts. I touch my back, it hurts. I touch my stomach, it hurts. So after every test and scan, the doctor says to the man, well, the good news is there's nothing wrong with your head or your back or your stomach. But the bad news is your finger is broken. And since your finger is broken, whatever you touch, it hurts. But it hurts because of that broken inner connection. And in our lives, as our lives hurt, so much of that pain of existence, of loss, of failure, of fear, of all of that we experience in this human package, this karmic package of being in a body, of fulfilling our particular role and duty in this cosmic divine drama. As we experience those ups and downs, when we are disconnected inside, those ups and downs cause us to suffer deeply and greatly. When the world does not behave according to what we want, how we want, we suffer deeply and greatly. So number one, connection. For those who are suffering, but also for those of us in the communities, in the societies, to remember they are not alone. In Hinduism, we say, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It means the world is a family. Jesus Christ said so beautifully, love thy neighbor as thyself. Well, in order to do that, you have to be able to see thy neighbor as thyself. So our religious traditions, whatever they may be, our spiritual traditions, whichever they may be, remind us we are not separate. We are one. One divine manifestation, one global family. And out of that connection blossoms compassion. Compassion from the societies, the communities, to reach out across that chasm, across the gap, to reach out with hands and hearts to those who are suffering, so that they do not suffer alone, or suffer in silence, or suffer in shame and stigma. We reach out with our love, with our assistance, in whatever we can do to create compassionate societies in our companies, in our businesses, in our schools, in every aspect of our society, to really embrace those who are suffering. In the same way that we reach out for those who are physically challenged, we reach out to those who are suffering mentally. And for those who are suffering, compassion is just as important. Compassion for yourself. Compassion for what you have been through, for your struggles, for how you are doing your very best with the toolbox you've been given. And compassion, of course, for your higher self, that capital S self, that true self, just waiting for you to know it, experience it, live it, accept the invitation to live in that awareness, to be able to exhale and let go of the grudges, of the attachments, of the fear, of the ego, of the expectations. And compassion for however long it takes you to do that. And we need courage. Courage is the third C. Courage to reach out and get help. Whether it's a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a spiritual leader, a meditation teacher, a mentor, whomever it is in whatever capacity, reach out. Help is there. There is nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to feel less than or bad about. Grab that help. You are worth it. Help is there for you. And for those of us in the communities and societies, let us have the courage to envision and then implement new ways of being in our societies that provide more and more, easier and easier, more and more accessible help for those who are suffering. Remembering in our open-hearted courage that they are one with us, that there is no other. They are also self. And lastly, creativity. Creativity to envision, to innovate, to implement new ways of being in our societies, in our communities, to help both prevent and also mitigate the suffering from mental dis-ease, better community cohesion, better mental health programs in our schools and our workplaces. And for those who are suffering, the courage to be creative in how you think about yourself, the thoughts that you jump on as vehicles that take you to more misery. Can you instead jump on thoughts of courage, of compassion, that will help you take the steps that you need to truly unfold into that beautiful, fragrant flower with its petals open to the sun that you are? Such deep gratitude to the Chopra Foundation, to the Hinduja Foundation, to the Alchemic Sonic Environment, for bringing all of us together today and reminding us that we are all one. We are deeply connected. So much love to all of you at this special time.
I want to encourage you to partner with the Live to Give initiative of the Hinduja Hospital. Whoever saves one life saves the entire world. Please donate at hindujahospital.com. Our next experience at the midpoint of our deep listening journey is a collective dialogue following an open source method of listening created by theoretical physicist David Bohm and philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti, building on the seed topic towards a sustainable ecosystem. This radically new vision of dialogue will build collectively, allowing the energy and experience and consciousness of our panelists to flow through their experience. Dr. Shekhar Saxena, professor at the Global Health and Population at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, Dr. K.V. Kishore Kumar, director of the Banyan and the Banyan Academy, Rajvi Mariwala, director, Mariwala Health Initiative, Dr. Lakshmi Sankaran, chairperson, Applied Psychology Department at BOM, and Ritu Prakash Chabria, managing trustee, Mukul Madhav Foundation, moderated by our dear friend, Siddharth Mehta, managing partner, Mehta and Padamsi Advocates.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Mental Health Dialogue. Special welcome to Raj Mariwala, to Dr. Lakshmi Shankaran, to Ritu Chabaria, to Dr. Kishore Kumar, and Dr. Shekhar Saxena. Thank you for your experience and expertise, and thank you for sharing that with us today as part of our dialogue. We hope that you bring to this dialogue the distillation of the learning and your thoughts about taking this forward. And we are sure that all of us participating and the listeners to this are going to benefit and carry that forward. Without much ado, it would be great if we start. How can we build a sustainable ecosystem for the future of mental health and well-being in India?
I think when we examine that question, we need to begin from where we are. And I must say that there is no mental health in India, at least at the institutional level. It's all about mental illness. So the Ministry of Health is actually Ministry of Illnesses. And we really need to change that to see that communities, countries, including in India, recognize what mental health is and how can we promote that. So that is something which is very fundamental. And at this time, there is really very little. So we have a long way to go. Even before we talk about sustainable, we have to at least make a beginning to recognize that mental health is a responsibility for all of us individually, but also for the communities and countries. So we need to find out what are the urgent needs and then how can that be sustainable. And all stakeholders need to really contribute to that, including all of us.
Got it.
Yeah, Dr. Saxena has raised a very pertinent issue of how governments focus on illness rather than well-being. In my viewpoint, there is a great scope to promote health of young people, prepare them for tomorrow, and the stakeholders, which is sustainable, is families and larger communities. At this point in time, we are very happy to be very individualistic right from the beginning. And this notion of individualism is not going to be very useful in our context because we were always led by people. We were reared to be following people rather than living lives on our own. And that notion is creating a great degree of strain in the system, resulting in multitude of problems: substance use, suicides, crime, disharmony, discontinuation of school, and all these traumatic events happening for people before the age of 20 is likely to create enduring problems. One important issue to me is building competence in people. We know that mental health resource is limited in the country, whereas we have a large number of people who can be taken in as volunteers, which can be a sustainable way of working with young people. For example, there are a large group of volunteers, there are a large group of teachers, there could be young people who are interested in working with the peers, peer support, and lastly, parents. If collectively all of these resources can be pooled to build competence in young people, teach them how they can deal with their life, problem solve, decide, choose a career, and make decisions for a better life tomorrow, I think we will have a large number of problems solved as early as possible. Because a large degree of distress that exists in the adults in the community can be traced back to early childhood. And often this problem is due to neglect by parents, or parents thinking that children will be able to handle things on their own, and therefore they are running their own race at the cost of neglecting these children. And this will be a very, very important method to build competence. Secondly, in the context of schools, teachers can contribute in an enormous way to build that competence in children, because it is not just about memorizing passages and get marks, but it is very important to learn about competence. So I would think, thinking before acting, deciding what is good for you, thinking about what is the best way to move forward is to decide about better tomorrow and better country tomorrow.
So I just want to add, I was thinking about how when we talked about families, for me, the Banyan women living together was to see the community home itself as a family. Looking at the women who were homeless and on a journey of recovery and wellness is a family of its own. So I'm trying to understand how, like what I heard, Dr. Saxena share, that we talk about illness and how, what if I flip it and look at wellness? And here I was struck by the ecosystem where I was teaching, and and I was teaching, and I felt that can there be some magic in wellness? Can be something different in what we can add to, for example, women, recovering from schizophrenic problems, women who have cognitive difficulties, women who are, who have, flares of symptoms, and what is it that will, maintain some kind of a joy, or something that is sustainable. And just things like storytelling yielded so much of a rich amount of conversations. For example, in Tamil Nadu, I found that there was recollection on singing old MGR songs, Jalalita, Padmini, breaking into a dance, the movement, things that very often one may not see in a therapeutic context, but how we were able to discuss this, for example, in teaching students, the young people, to try out other ways of healing, using stories, movement, music, all the experiences that can contribute to wellness, and definitely bring in another narrative to remember things, the joy that I had as a child. No one has asked me that, but when we have a conversation about this, for example, my passion, as I said, is in arts-based therapies, which includes all this. Suddenly something strikes, and I remember that song, and then it sort of catches on. It's very infectious. So all these are, I just, for example, I just want to show, this is what we picked up. There are lots of this. Cost nothing. So we've got a whole lot of stuff we made. We've got a kit. And is this therapy is a question that I ask myself. And hey, you know what? If it brings in joy, why not? That was something that I thought. And also, I think it's important for me that when I think, again, to resonate on what Dr. Saxena said, that it's about us, it's not them. Cultivating my virtue of patience, my virtue of here and now, my virtue of, hey, I don't have the answers. Let's go with the flow, right? There's a very important message in the journey of mental health, you see, and trying to fix something is not the point, but just to go with the flow in every sense is something that is where my heart is.
So
I was just thinking as I've heard the conversation with the three panelists here, there's a lot that everyone has in common. And when I'm looking at it, I think it's words that we need, like inclusiveness, we need compassion, and we need a lot of training. When I say training, I don't mean formal training, but it's training perhaps with visuals, visuals which can be short sort of movies, snippets, which make a great impact when we're teaching children. And I feel that we all have a child within us, and it's important for us to bring that out. And in bringing that out, I find that a lot of visual support from the fraternity of those who are making short movies are somehow instilling a lot of thought process within how we can make it not mental illness, as Dr. Saxena said, but mental health and well-being that we must all think about. I feel that communities around us, whether it is from the primary health centers, when we're looking into the rural areas, or we're looking at community centers in urban cities, teachers, the training that teachers are having, especially in India, I don't think it includes anything to do with understanding their students with mental health. It's all about academics and not taking this perspective into consideration. And this is what we found when we had a training program that we did in rural Maharashtra, where we found that teachers were not aware of how to identify a problem with the students that they have in front of them daily under their nose. They feel that the child is either, having disabilities or having a problem at home. So looking for reasons to put on that child. Whereas a simple training of the mind of the teachers from the very beginning on how to see a child, how to educate a child, and to see how they can bring three components, that's the student, the parent, and the teachers together to become the formative learning part of our society is very important. So training the mind, inclusiveness with a lot of compassion is the way I feel that we need to begin once again with the way that we are going into academics and mental health and the way that we see the world go around us. So that's how I see things can make a big difference.
So I'm going to connect back to, I think, what Dr. Kumar and Dr. Lakshmi were talking about, and in particular the idea of not looking at it individually. So if I have to think about the ecosystem and building a sustainable ecosystem, looking at individuals is not enough. So in fact, if we are to build a system, it's going to be critical to foreground community voices and participation. And one of the ways in which to do that is by acknowledging how systemic barriers and marginalizations specific to particular contexts affect an individual's well-being. So let's not talk mental illness, let's talk well-being, as Dr. Saxena was talking about. And so if we are to build that path, to a holistic, universally accessible mental health ecosystem, one of the ways in which to do it is community voices, challenging structural inequalities, countering systems of expert knowledge, and of course, taking this power from the margins. And I'll go back to, I think, again, what Dr. Lakshmi was talking about, in the Banyan shelter, and the idea of women coming together as chosen family, really. And this sort of community-based work is really critical, and it goes beyond just filling the gaps. Looking at peers, they're a very precious and scarce resource when sometimes both the mental health establishment and traditional kinship systems are unaccepting or violent. And so one of the ways in which some of us have shared experiences, and those should really be harnessed if we are to build an ecosystem, is not the very individual experiences of discrimination, but the shared experience of marginalization and the power of working together as a community, as chosen family.
Just want to pick up on what Dr. Kishore and also Dr. Ritu were talking about in terms of the education sector, schools, teachers. I believe that although we call it mental health and well-being, it's not only health, it's really the overall community's involvement that needs to be there within the health sector, but also outside the health sector. And schools are one example, very important example. But we also need to look at the workplace, which actually during the COVID-19 pandemic have also created a lot of changes. Sometimes, quite often, we are working from home, but still we are responsible for certain tasks. And workplace is a very important consideration as a determinant for mental health, because there are many factors which affect our mental health as we work, but also it can be protective, also can be harmful. So I think we need a multitude of sectors, health, but also outside health, which are responsible, which can be responsible for a sustainable ecosystem. So if we continue to call mental health as just part of health, then we are ignoring a lot of potential benefits which can come from outside the areas. And education and workplace are important ones, but there are also the overall community development. There are many organizations, formal as well as informal, who are working for economic upliftment, for community development, and they need to embrace some of the objectives of mental health and well-being so that when they do what they do, this can be kept in mind and it can be delivered in a way where they not only achieve their own stated objectives like nutrition or like creating jobs, but also can help in promoting mental health for the communities that they serve. So I see mental health as an integral part of the overall development within many, many sectors, rather than just talking about mental health as a part of health.
Great. I'm reminded, Dr. Saxena, when you mentioned sort of it being a collaborative approach, and also where mental well-being has to encompass a lot more. Interestingly, recently a judge in India ruled that for insurance companies, mental health will now be included, even if it is not specifically listed as under the normal definition of health, and they would have to include it as part of it, even if it wasn't there specifically set out, or if it was an exclusion in a policy. She has now ruled that this will be treated as part of the policy. And sort of I'm reminded by that also of a time when India, prior to it becoming a republic and a democracy, we had something called a Lunatics Removal Act in 1851, which was at that point in time, the legislation was drawn up to remove lunatics, is the term they used, from general society and move them to safer spaces. That subsequently evolved into the Lunacy Act of 1912 in India, where again, sort of the approach was to try and consolidate and amend the laws, but also to protect the general public. That metamorphosized into the Mental Healthcare Act of 1987, where for the first time, sort of we started seeing an initiative or an effort to look at it under a different lens. Yes, that was subsequently repealed in 2018 and then replaced by what seems to be considered to be so far in our trajectory, possibly the most enlightened act that we've had till date in terms of the structures it's set up. And I'm reminded that it's only actually about 1,000 days since that has actually been notified and it has come into effect, really. So time-wise, we've seen a quick run-up more recently as far as this is concerned. And I understand from what we're all discussing that really, despite, and this goes back to also what Raj, you were talking about, the ecosystem. And Dr. Saxena, as you were saying, if we have to build it, it has to encompass a lot more. We're still, yes, at the point where we talk about it as a mental illness as far as the law is concerned, because it's considered to be something that's debilitating. The law doesn't yet look at the overall causes and deal with those causes in this specific method of legislation. So I would be very interested to know how you believe this collaborative effort to achieve universal mental health care in India can be strengthened at the national and the district level. And what is it that we can be doing to lead it and galvanize it to move faster with all of us participating in it?
So I'm actually just going to swing back to what Dr. Saxena was saying, simply because I have to say it, because I've been very keen on talking about mental health as a development issue. And it's very odd that mental health has remained invisible in development paradigms, when in fact, mental health heavily influences 10 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals: no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, decent work and economic growth, and of course, peace and justice. So the first point is that mental health issues cannot be considered in isolation from other areas of development, such as education, livelihoods, disaster response, of course, as we've seen now with COVID, and human rights, which takes me to what you were saying, Siddharth, and about the first laws that came in, and these were put in by the British. We got mental health institutions as part of colonization, of course, because they had built them in the West. And at that particular point, the person who was in charge of these institutions was actually the head of police. So it's very interesting that actually people were removed from society, lunatics, so as to speak, to keep society safe more than the other way around. And that's why we see stigma today. So of course, a lot of our work has to center around that, but I just needed to reiterate the point about mental health as a development issue.
Siddharth, I just want to come back to what you said. I think India is making a lot of progress in terms of legislation, but also in terms of actual work. So let's not go back with the notion that nothing is being done. For example, the 2018 legislation and policy on mental health of the country actually gives a right to people for mental health, when the right to health itself is not so well articulated. So I think it's a very positive development. Although I know that there are lags and delays in notifying it and implementing it, but at least there is a legislation which gives people right for mental health and treatment of mental illnesses. Similarly, the judgment that you referred to, it's good that it's at least happening. In USA, it was 3 decades before, 3 decades earlier, that there was the parity law, which is exactly the same, that health insurance companies cannot make a differentiation between reimbursement for physical health condition versus mental health condition. And that now is being followed. So hopefully in India, we will again reach that kind of parity where the governmental mental health services are at par with the physical health service. We are far from it, but at least there is a commitment now. And I think we can all hope towards something better coming from government side, but obviously we can't just depend on that. So communities have to ask for it. Communities have to be ready for it. Community has to work for it to really make that happen. And that's what is going to give rise to at least an ecosystem which is on the right path, and then making sure that it becomes sustainable.
Well, thank you very much for participating in this dialogue. I think the views and the recommendations that you bring in are invaluable. They are intersectional and intersectoral as well. I understand that we intend to collaboratively, to work in a collaboration to try and build the ecosystem in a place and get it to a place where it is better than what it is currently and better than what it was yesterday. We're cognizant of what each of you have shared with us, and I'd like to thank you once again for participating in this dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
all the best. All the best.
Our journey so far has been emotional and educational. We've been immersed ourselves in useful research and virtually walked into the shoes of speakers who've been brave enough to share intense personal stories. Now, let's take a moment to notice how our minds and bodies feel, process any tension or relief we're feeling, and allow ourselves to bask in the moment together as a connected and empathetic collective. Our next experience is led by sound designer and ethnomusicologist Aurelio, who is also the founder and creative director of Swaram, musical instruments and research in Auroville, India. Swaram has evolved into a collaborative research space for sound pioneers from all over the world. Please dim your lights, wear your headphones, and enjoy this exquisite sonic experience created by Aurelio and the Swaram Sound Experience.
We are grateful to be connected and be able to participate in this worldwide online gathering and to share something of this communal sound work of Swaram here in Auroville, South India. In these challenging times when we sometimes feel alone and isolated, we recognize the value of family and community and a deeper social coherence. For this, we would like to invite you into a special experience where we share the wholesome healing impact of a sonic environment. The sonorium is a specifically developed configuration of musical instruments that are tuned to proportional frequencies, which are also reflected in the human organism, our natural environment, and the cyclic cosmic movements.
Shrimulakan Shrimulakanniye Shrimulakanniye Pomale kodamale Pomale kodavada malendannithu chudiyataye. This is the swaram or the swara which used to relax me as a child. Somebody who grew up, couldn't even speak on stage, had a bad stutter, still struggle with it. Swara or swaram. Aurelio, thank you for transporting me back to your same place in Pondicherry. And what Aurelio has just introduced to us is a wonderful, unique technique of sound therapy that we can explore in our own lifestyles. At a time when so much suffering and tragedy surrounds us, it's important to be mindful, to have intention and thought in all our actions, and not live life in our default mode. Dr. Tara Swart is adding to our wellness toolkit another new healing technique that merges science and spirituality. She is a neuroscientist, medical doctor, senior lecturer at MIT Sloan, and author of the bestseller, The Source.
Hello, I'm Dr. Tara Swart, neuroscientist, medical doctor, and author of bestseller The Source, which merges science and spirituality. I'm so honoured to be part of the Never Alone Summit, particularly this year with a spotlight on India. The critical tool that combines cognitive science and the wisdom traditions is mindfulness and meditation. At a time where it can feel like we're witnessing so much human suffering and it's easy to lose hope, it's more important than ever to cultivate abundant thinking and believe that we will find a way through this. The most effective way of doing that is by using mindfulness, and that can mean a formal meditation practice, but it can also mean living in a more mindful way with mindful eating, mindful walking, and paying attention to loved ones. From everything that I've learned from neuroscience, medicine, and my research into spirituality, it always comes back down for me to the connection with ourselves, understanding our brain-body connection and the impact that things like meditation can have on all the nerves and hormones throughout our body, remembering the importance of our connection with other people, and remembering the importance of our connection with the planet. And so I'd like to speak today about some research that was done by Professor Amishi Jha of the University of Miami in Florida on the US Marines using mindfulness meditation. She showed that Marines who did 12 minutes of mindfulness meditation per day for 8 weeks prior to being deployed into battle had less anxiety, less insomnia, and less stress than their colleagues who didn't do meditation. Interestingly, there were a few skeptics in the meditation group who didn't either practice daily or practice much at all. But when they saw that their colleagues weren't sweating and suffering as much as they were under extreme pressure, they asked to start practicing the tools and techniques. Now, the researchers thought that it wouldn't make much difference because they were already in such a stressful situation. But what they found was that giving these sorts of brain training or meditation techniques to people protected their brains and particularly their attention, even during extremely stressful times. I always say that neuroplasticity represents hope, and I think that research really can give us hope that if we start meditating now, then it's helpful for ourselves, our own bodies, but also for other people who might be suffering. Since our mental state, our entire nervous system, and our immune system are connected, mindfulness meditation has a huge impact on our physical health and well-being, our mental resilience, our emotional balance, and our spiritual connectedness. Now, meditation can mean many different things. It can be focusing on your breath. It can be open monitoring of thoughts, where you allow thoughts to come and go and you just notice them without getting involved or overwhelmed by the emotion that's related to those thoughts. It can be focusing on a specific word, sound, or object in your mind, or sounds around you. And it can also be what's called intentional mind wandering, which is different to daydreaming. The intention part is very important, and it's just allowing your mind to go out of task-focused mode into mind wandering and just follow your thoughts wherever they go. Now, one of the most ancient Indian traditions is Vedic meditation, which is use of a specific mantra. And this word can be repeated at any time of day, it can be thought about, it can be said out loud or in your mind. And there's a whole different impact of people meditating together as well. So as part of my research, I sometimes generate mantras for people. And I would like to gift a mantra to you, for yourself, and to show support to the people of India. The word I've chosen is the Sanskrit word for protection, and the word is Raksha. Even if you just said this word once a day in your mind, or wrote it down somewhere and have it on a post-it note on your mirror so that you look at it when you're brushing your teeth, it will make a difference to what happens in the world. It's so important for us to remember that we're way more connected than we understand that we are. And just that little act will make a difference, both for your own physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, and a knock-on cascade effect for the people that need it the most. Mindfulness has been described as mental armor by researchers who work in this area. And at a time where it can feel so easy to lose hope, it's more important than ever that we cultivate positive thinking. There's an ancient Buddhist saying that is, replace every negative thought with a positive thought. And this is actually very backed up by the latest research in neuroplasticity, which is the incredible ability of the brain to grow and change throughout life. If we get into a negative spiral and we have a mantra or something that we do to flip us into positivity, into not avoiding taking healthy risks and doing things to help others, then that grows over time to be our natural default way of thinking and being. I really hope you've enjoyed hearing about the science and that you will take away this little practical tool and take it forward into your life for the benefit of yourself and others. Thank you.
I want to take a moment to say thank you so much for all of you to deeply listen up till this point. Now, as we move to the final chapter of our alchemic experience, it is our honor to begin the conversation about mental health and its relationship to our environment with India's and my personal most beloved spiritual teacher, Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswati, president of Param Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, one of India's largest interfaith institutions that provides education, training, and healthcare to those in need. The path to removing social inequalities includes sustainable environmental practices. Research conducted by the United Nations shows that socioeconomic inequality in the household, workplace, and other spheres of life has a negative impact on the natural world. Muniji, it's an honor for us to be graced by your presence.
Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya om shanti shanti shanti. My dear sisters and brothers, it is so wonderful to join you from the banks of Mother Ganga, from the laps of the Himalayas, and from Parmarth Niketan, Rishikesh, India. For the Never Alone Global Mental Health Summit. It is a great to see the Chopra Foundation provide this much needed platform for so many across the world. And I'm so glad that Alchemic Sonic Environment, the Hinduja Foundation are partners also this year. Today, we are not merely gathered here, but we are together here. There is a great power in community. Community literally means come unity. Today, so many of us are still battling the virus. Some of we may still be locked in our homes, following extensive curfews and reminded every day to follow the guidelines, wearing a mask, washing our hands, and maintaining our physical distancing, and many other rules are there. So many of us have lost someone near and dear to us during this pandemic. Very painful. No matter who we are or what situation we are in, but we all recognize that the world has changed, and it seems that we might never be able to return to normal, our life as we know it. But how we react or respond to that change is our choice. We can choose to feel despair and distress, or we can choose acceptance. Or we can see this as Mother Nature's wake-up call. And to me, it is a wake-up call. Hence, let us cultivate the unshakable faith and deep understanding that we are all in this together. We might be currently physically alone, but we are not alone in our hearts or our spirits. There is a virus in the air, yes, but there must not be a virus in our minds and in our hearts. For a truly virus-free world, in both body and mind, we must move from corona to karuna, compassion, with conviction and commitment. Today, the coronavirus has brought us face to face with death and disease. The virus has shattered our illusions, forced us to question what actually is important in life, what actually matters. We begin to realize that life itself matters, our health matters, love and relationships matter, our mental peace matters. I can see people have so much money, so much affluence of wealth, but they are in stress right now. They are living in fear. So the very basic truth is we have to understand the truth of life. And at the same time, the very basics in life, what matters? Oxygen, water, they matter. And finally, our connection to each other and to the divine, that matters. We think our body, our mind, and our spirit are these separate compartments, but we don't realize that a leak in any one part of the boat will sink the whole boat. The virus isn't actually doing as much damage as the fear and stress of the virus is harming our humanity. I often share that when I becomes we, illness becomes wellness. Literally, if we remove the I from the word illness and replace it with we, then the word becomes wellness. When we move out of our boxes, out of our cocoons, out of our selfishness, out of being stuck in our own ego, then we become healthier, and also our world becomes healthier. This is why practice of yoga, meditation, selfless service are so beneficial on so many levels, because they take a problem of I and they connect us to we. I becomes we and illness becomes wellness. So selfless service, our seva, enables us to realize our interconnectedness and interdependency and our oneness with all. COVID has shown us that we cannot be fully healthy until and unless all of us are healthy. We are all speaking about boosting our immunity. But in the process, if we forget our humanity, our collective responsibility to save lives, to serve, to help in times of crisis, then what is the use of that immunity? So humanity and immunity must go hand in hand. This is why compassion is so critical these days. And let me tell you and express my gratitude to you that Never Alone Summit is focusing on compassion. It is only when we develop passion for compassion that we can truly bring health, physical, mental, and environmental to our planet. So let us all have passion for compassion. Let compassion becomes not only fashion, but becomes a part of our life. In closing, this is the mantra to remember our culture, our nature, and our future. If we want to save our future, we have to protect our culture and our nature. These are two different cultures. There are two different cultures or value systems one can choose from. A culture that sees the world as a parivar. Parivar means in Hindi, which we use for the family. Or a culture that sees the world as a bazaar, means a marketplace. In a bazaar, there is a competition and exploitation. In a family, there is a sharing and caring. In a bazaar, your loss is my gain, and in a family, your gain is my gain. We must shift our mindset. We must see the truth that the world is one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We all are one. We have to live for each other, with each other. We have to share with each other and work selflessly to serve our world family. When we live feeling that the world is our family, we feel happier, more at peace, more connected, and less alone. And also, we become assets to the world and instruments of caring and compassion to others. And now let us talk about nature. We have seen that during COVID, Mother Earth heals. When we are locked down, when we go inside, Mother Earth heals. It shows us that we are the problem. So we now must be the solution. COVID has taught us the importance of water, oxygen, and all 5 elements to heal our ailing bodies and minds and to keep us healthy and happy. So if we want healthy, happy, and harmonious life, we must reaffirm our commitment to protect our Mother Nature and Mother Earth by conserving water, protecting our natural resources, planting trees, and choosing more sustainable lifestyles. When we protect our culture and nature, we realize that our future is automatically protected. The future is in our hands, and it depends on how we live in the present. I once again thank you, the organizers of this summit, for creating such a powerful and impactful event to discuss the vital topic of mental health and well-being. Thank you, and thank you.
While we know that the virus has not differentiated between religions, races, castes, or communities, we must also understand how all of us are part of one unified world that must trade selfish desires for selfless public service. Individual mental well-being can be activated by seva, the art of selfless service that ultimately contributes to our home, the environment, and a deep sense of feeling safe. Join us for a heartfelt conversation between Paul Abraham, president of the Hinduja Foundation, and Mr. Bharat Mitra, founder of Organic India, a sustainable business that supports local resources, organic products, and solutions.
Just to quickly introduce Bharat Mitra to everyone. Bharat Mitra and his wife Bhavani founded Organic India way back in 1997. Organic works with thousands of farmers, nourishing land, communities, and livelihoods, producing a diverse set of organic well-being products that are internationally and nationally marketed. Bharat Mitra is also involved in other initiatives like Uplift, which are concerned with the broader area of well-being and mental well-being of mankind and humankind in general. And some of this started way back with a small initial association, which later grew into a guru-sishya kind of relationship with Papaji. Bharat Mitra, would you like to give us a little bit of background to how all this came about?
Well, thank you. And I'm really happy and grateful to be here. I'm grateful to all that are involved in this heartfelt initiative that we need more. And any small way that I can contribute, I see it as a great privilege, and I'm really happy to be with you today. I think the most important one that you're referring to, Paul, started with a visit that I had with Dr. Narendra Singh into his village. We went there for 4 days because he wanted to introduce me his family and to show me where he grew up. There was no other agenda at all. But when we arrived to the village, we came to know that just a few kilometers away, a group of farmers committed suicide. I was shocked to my core. They sat in a circle and they drank the pesticide that was the root cause for their desperation. Farmers in this whole district have been challenged on every aspect of life by embracing the so-called green revolution that deprived them from their dignity, deprived them from their land, and destroyed community across the countries. So when we came to know about this, there was a calling. It was spontaneous. There was no intention to do anything like this. It was just a situation of life that emerged from being there. And the vision to work with those farmers and to support them in converting their chemically abused field into organic, sustainable field have been given to us as a gift from life.
You know, today we feel the pandemic has exposed the mental well-being fragility of so much in this world, where people seem to be just mentally collapsing, and their well-being is, being affected so much. And yet we need to leave everyone with the message that they are not alone. We are all in this together. So what would your message be to the people and the viewers at the summit?
My message is that we're all blessed in spite of the heartbreaking suffering for so many people. We're also all blessed by the pandemic, because the pandemic allowed the revelation. The pandemic allowed the reality of oneness to be part of each and every one of us reality. The pandemic does not make any difference between Americans and Indians, Israeli and Australian and Pakistanis, between Christians and Muslims, and Hindus and Jainas and Jews. The truth is that so many are mentally fragile. The situation exposed it. But it's not that before we were all resilient and the pandemic came and, oh my God, we are mentally fragile. We are mentally fragile for decades because we are disconnected from our true nature. And even the people that were not considered as mentally fragile, some of the top corporate leaders and the rich and the famous, when you go a little bit deeper into their life, they need a pill to sleep, and they need a pill for anti-stress, and they need a pill to... We are fragile because we are valuing the wrong things. So this is a great opportunity. It's once in a lifetime opportunity for all of us to wake up to the invitation from life, to inquire truthfully how we can allow a new way of being to emerge. Nobody has the answer. And in this way, you're not alone. We are all in it together. There is no one spiritual teacher, there is no one tradition, there is no one religion, one country, one company, one initiative that can do any meaningful change. It's only when we're aligned, first and foremost in the truth, that we're all interconnected, that the freedom to co-create in service of a transformative change is allowed. And by having more and more individuals and organizations and initiatives transcending the ego-based culture, the selfish way of operating, to come together in service, something extraordinary can happen on the planet in our own lifetime.
Wow. Thanks for that. And with that, I'd like to say a very, very big Bharat Mitra for taking us through not just the philosophy of organic India, but at a very fundamental level, the emerging philosophy of life, which has always been there, but may not be recognized.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for believing in this partnership. It's been several months now, but it's great to see you now come back, share your vision, and really start this collaboration between the Chopra Foundation and the Hinduja Foundation. If we allow ourselves to awaken our consciousness, we can perceive the connection between us and nature. In fact, our next speaker's ethos is perfectly in line with this sentiment. Dr. Mohan Agashe reminds us that our cognitive development cannot merely be restricted to reading and writing. We must expand our consciousness, be open to all our senses, and in turn to the possibilities of learning from our natural environment. Dr. Mohan Agashe is an Indian psychiatrist, an internationally acclaimed actor and producer of films and theater. he has launched Grips Theatre, an experimental youth performance space for children to process their emotions. He has also helped formulate mental health policy in his native state of Maharashtra. Welcome, Dr. Mohan Agashe.
Ah, there you are.
Mom said you can't go out because of the pandemic. So she sent your favorite dish. It must be so lonely to be alone.
If you are with the nature, with all your senses, you are never alone. I am Dr. Mohan Agashe. You've just seen my film. What I have learned from my culturally rich country, India, is that I am never really independent. Because when I began life, I was a part of my mother, and only after 9 months, I became apart from her and had an individual identity as Mohan Agashe. But I wouldn't have been there if my mother was not there. What holds true for me also holds true for Mother Nature. We are always a part of nature. It's only after Industrial Revolution we thought and had an independent identity as human beings. But had the Mother Nature not been there, we wouldn't have been here. But after Industrial Revolution progressed and self-centric thinking dominated than collective thinking, the problems of loneliness began. Before, we never felt alone because we were one with the nature, though we were apart from nature. And we always learn to listen, learn to see. And our sensory intelligence was as good as our experiential intelligence. But when learning shifted after printing technology to only cognitive development through reading and writing, our development became lopsided and our sensory intelligence could never come with our academic intelligence. That's when we suddenly started feeling lonely and alone. But if we still think that we are part of nature and carefully listen to sounds of nature, images of nature, and always respect nature as a part of nature, we will never be alone. Thank you.
So far, we've learned how mental health binds us all, how our brains function over the course of our lives, and how we can tune our thoughts and cognitive development to curate a lifestyle steeped in love, creative expression, compassion, sustainability, new technologies, and therapies. It is really time for us to build a culture of compassion, truth, and the interconnectedness that we all experience to build a sustainable new ecosystem for the future of mental health and well-being in India and the world. It is with great honor and privilege I introduce you to our next speaker, His Holiness Radhanath Swami, a New York Times bestselling author, philanthropist, and founder of Govardhan Eco Village, a 100-acre sustainable community just outside of Mumbai, India. This eco-village is a model to combat some of the world's most urgent issues, such as climate change, poverty, and access to healthcare. Thank you for gracing us with your kindness and wisdom. Maharaj, welcome.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I am sincerely grateful and honored to have this opportunity to be with all of you today. My special gratitude to the Alchemic Sonic Environment, the Hinduja Foundation, and the Chopra Foundation, Never Alone, and to Satya for so kindly inviting me, and to each and every one of you for giving your precious time to be with us today. The culture of compassion is built upon a foundational truth wherein we recognize and appreciate the interconnectedness of all of us. A universal principle of all true spiritual paths is to honor the sacredness of life. When we do this, in fact, we are never alone. Yoga or religion is a process by which we harmonize the body, the mind, with the heart and the soul. To harmonize our lives with God, with the sacred environment around us, and with all living beings. The Brahma Sutra tells Janmadhyasya yataha that the greatest truth is the understanding that we are all coming from the same source. We are all essentially of the same spiritual substance. Bhumir-apona lovayur kamano bodhreirvacha. Ahankara, that these material elements are constantly changing, but they are all the energy of the all-loving, supremely compassionate source, or God, we call Krishna, who has many names. Vidyavanaya sampane brahmane kabihastini suni chaiva swapake cha pandita samadarshana. When we see beyond all the variegatedness of this ever-changing world, we recognize that each and every one of us is an eternal part of God, Satchidananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of joy. The living force, the true self, is eternal and full of beauty and full of happiness. And when we recognize that within our own hearts, then we can appreciate that that is at the essence of all living beings. And Paratukaduki, my beloved teacher, Srila Prabhupada, emphasized this principle. that true enlightenment is when we feel happiness in others' happiness. And we're deeply concerned with the sufferings of others. So much of the problems in the world is a disconnection from our own self. When a building is connected to a strong foundation, then even storms, even earthquakes cannot make it crumble. And similarly, when we are rooted or connected to this foundational happiness and peace of our own souls, then the storms of this world cannot cause our peace and our joy and meaning in life to crumble. Externally, we need each other to share and to care, to help each other to appreciate the beauty of harmony. Nature is teaching us every day how everything is connected. The sun, the water, the rain, the trees and the forests, the bees and the insects. Everything is so much interdependent on each other for there to be a healthy environment. And for there to be true peace, happiness, and meaning individually and collectively within human society, we need to seriously apply to our lives an appreciation and a need to live in harmony with the environment and with each other. There are several principles spiritually that help us to come together with this experience of life. Satsang, which is to be inspired and to give inspiration to like-minded people, to be in the company of people who uplift each other, who give each other faith and hope and meaning, and help each other to make that inner connection with God. Sadhana is to have a spiritual practice, to have put some time aside each day to make that inner connection to our true self, to give our mind peace from within. These are turbulent times, and turbulent times shed light on the great necessity of this journey within. Transcendental sound, kirtan, chanting God's names, chanting prayers, beautiful music, spiritual music helps us to tune in to the compassionate, loving nature of the soul. Seva, the expression of a joyful heart and the process by which to reach that joy is to value service. Seva means to serve without selfishness, to try to uplift the body, the minds, the hearts, and the souls of others. At this particular time, there's such a great need for people who really care and harmonize time and life itself with that spirit of caring. in that caring, we discover our potential to love. And when it is connected to our soul and to the love of God, it's an untiring and beautiful love that can bring light even in the darkest situations. We all have such beauty and grace because that's who we forever are. Through satsang, sadhana, and seva, we discover the real treasure of life, to love and to serve. And sadachar. The world is in great need of people who serve by their example in life. Each and every one of us is a leader in a certain way. In spirituality, quality has the greatest emphasis. In the world today, people put so much emphasis on quantity. But a happy life is a life of quality, where we value love and compassion as the inherent need of the soul and the very nature of life itself. I'm so very grateful that this conference is being held, where various spiritual leaders and social leaders and educators could share their experiences with one another. And at this particular time, I offer my gratitude and I offer my prayers that by our beloved Lord, grace, you all sarve sukhano bhavantu, can be happy. Thank you very much.
Pujya Radhanath Swamiji, thank you for your words of wisdom. And as I stand here reflecting on what you just said, seva, sangha, and sadhana. Seva, selfless service. Sangha, moving from bazaar to parivar. And sadhana, our own practice of mental health and mental well-being. Before closing our summit today, I would like us to look within your hearts and souls and find a beam of hope we can latch onto and see us through these very testing times. That's also precisely the message of our final guest, Kunal Sood, a dear friend of mine, a global ambassador for the Nonviolence Project and founder of We the Planet, We the Future, and Novus. His whole focus is community. Community is a powerful force, and together we must overcome our differences, forgive our mistakes, and practice self-compassion, karuna. Most importantly, we must look within and find a purpose to keep us continuing on an epigenetic journey where mind-body integration is at the foundation of healthcare, and we unite in our diverse experiences for planetary healing and global alchemy. Please join me in welcoming our last speaker and Jedi warrior for Indian Spotlight, Kunal Sood.
Hi, my name is Kunal Sood. I'm so honored to be here at the Never Alone Summit. This summit, to me, signifies so much because last year, when I was here, we were fighting in the midst of the COVID-19 battle. And I sat right here in New York City, sharing with you all a glimmer of hope for the future, not to give up. But today, I have to say, with a heavy heart, my heart goes out to India. For all of you that are suffering on the ground here and now, I know hope looks like a myth and a far-fetched dream. And therefore, I want to speak a little bit about hope today and why hope matters so much here and now, as well as why we have to come together more than ever before in order to fight for one another, not with one another, but for each other, to survive and conquer this global grand challenge that has plagued us for over a year now. The second wave of COVID hit India like a tsunami, worse than I've ever seen or heard in the entire universe of the COVID pandemic. I thought it was bad in New York City, which was ravaged last year, exactly around this time, where we had over probably a third of the nation's count of COVID cases and an abundance of awful deaths that we witnessed on the ground. Mental health is such an important piece of the puzzle right now. I know everyone in India is going through hell, and I know that there are so many families that have lost loved ones and not been able to grieve them with dignity, given the rate at which COVID-19 is contagious with its new variant and rapidly coming to affect everyone in the city of Delhi as well as the whole of India. So I really want to share with you a few ideas that I think is very important here and now. Hope matters the most because if we have hope, we can dream of a better future. We can find a way to make the impossible possible. We can create a future that really belongs to us. We're all bleeding right now in India. We have a huge amount of work to do together to unify, and create something that's larger than ourselves. After the pain and suffering and the healing, there's going to be a lot of mental pain as well that we have to heal from. For that, we need to build the resilience within ourselves, the resilience as a country, the resilience for each other as a nation. And in order to do that, I have a few ideas that I feel would really help us here and now. First, find the moral courage within you to lead a life that's true to yourself and in service of others, while taking all the precautions to protect one another from this terrible virus that plagues us here and now. Second, practice compassion. There is no point blaming one another for what's happening here and now. We are all in this together. If we can practice the expansive compassion necessary as a country and as a world to not blame our governments or our neighbors or those that have not done right by us, but truly learn to forgive one another, to forgive ourselves. I know many of us right now must be blaming each other or ourselves even worse for having lost a loved one, saying, maybe I could save them, maybe I could have done more. I know I've been in this situation in my life when I lost my own mentor to the tragedy of suicide. This feels like a mass suicide, like a tsunami of death that no one can control. So really exercise that self-forgiveness and self-compassion and extend that to your neighbor, extend that to your community, and most of all, extend it to each other, even if you don't get along. Right now, we really need to have each other's backs, to look out for one another, to create a world full of possibility, even though it looks so grim and fearful. Hope must conquer fear. The right amount of hope can make the impossible possible here and now. And I firmly believe that we as a nation, as Indians, if we stand together, we will come out of this so strong, stronger than we have ever before. We have so much to give. We're a nation of values, love, affection, family, and extraordinary sovereignty. So stand by each other and make sure that you have each other's backs. Because more than ever before, all we have is each other, and we're much stronger together. The final piece that I put to this is creating a mantra within that idea of hope. The day before I found out about India being ravaged with this awful situation, I had launched on Earth Day Operation Hope, which was to help our planet every day. I realized that here and now, Mother Earth is sending us a signal, a sign that we must be there not only for each other as people, but for our planet. Let's treat the virus with respect. Let's give it its due respect for why it has come into our life. What message, what karma, what mental strength is it trying to develop in us? What muscle is it trying to develop as a force for good? I know it's very hard to do when you've lost and you look so grim and there's so much pain. But if we can really look at finding hope, to bear your own pain, to move through the suffering, to create hope out of the gift of pain, to treat and embrace pain as our great teacher, that, to me, is the greatest gift we can extend to ourselves as well as humanity here and now. So I'm here. I honor you. Strength in honor. Together, stronger. We have hope. Keep the faith. We will get through this. And may the force be with you. Thank you. And God bless you all. And we're going to win together.
Geographically, from the east to the west, let us stay infused with the fragrance of transformation, healing, truth of Mother India.